Good morning, everyone. How are you all doing? Good? Yeah? Ready to go? All right. So, I'm Thomas Blood. I lead the Digital Innovation Program for Europe, Middle East, and Africa. And I'm just going to say a few things, and I'm going to give it over to KBC Group, who are here, who are going to tell us a great story. I love these guys because they're innovative, they're fearless, they're doing things that are really extraordinary, in my opinion. So anyway, but they'll say more about this. So, we're here to talk about reinventing without a roadmap. And I'm sure you all have experienced reinventing without a roadmap. You're presented with new challenges. We've just been through a bunch of them. And you have to react and you have to do something different. And we will share with you, there's another person in KBC Group who's also here. Her name is Kate, but you'll be introduced to Kate later when Jo and Gunther come up. So one of the things that I want to share with you right up front is, I know we're a tech company and we talk about cloud technology and enabling technology and all these very cool tools that we have. But when I led a transformation, which was with Experian in 2014 through 16, the thing that was the most surprising, perhaps, was that it was really about people and organization and culture and transforming how we work, how we think, the mindset of the organization. And so this is actually a really important key takeaway from this session. We'll touch on it multiple times. And of course, we have things around security. So I just spoke to Shiva, right? Shiva? Earlier about security. Cost concerns. Do we have the right skills in the workforce? And so on. Those are all really, really, really important topics. And today, throughout the session, throughout the event today, you'll hear lots about these topics. So, as I said, we have to think about the cultural components of this, how we work together, how we think, how we enable each other, how we remove obstacles for each other, and then to unlock the potential that you all have. So think about all the people in your organization. You have hired really smart people. Can we remove obstacles and unlock that potential that they have? This story is about human interaction and using technology to simplify and facilitate this. It starts with the customer. We always start with the customer. At Amazon, we have this customer obsession. Everything we do starts with the need of the customer, and then we work backwards. We try to solve that problem for that customer in that context. And so KBC Group is going to talk about how they've done that and how they facilitate this human interaction, this way to use technology to connect with people. There's a question around this. We all have been in IT and in organizations for a very long time, and we have this notion that we have perfect vision of the future, that we have a roadmap that we understand. I used to work for the US government, and we wrote these specification documents that were 2 or 3 centimeters thick, and we predicted the future in great detail. And then we were surprised because we thought it was a straight path, and for 20 years, it's like we don't really learn. But actually, what it is a meandering path. We have to find ways as we move along. Unexpected things happen. New technology emerges, right? We design something with the old technology in mind, only to realize that there's a better way of doing it, a new thing that we can leverage, and we have to pivot and go in a different direction. So this notion that we can predict exactly where we're going is a bit tenuous, I would say. We have the general idea of where we're going. We have a mission and a vision of where we want to get to, but the details of how we get there, we learn by doing. It emerges over time. And again, KBC Group is going to tell us a great story around this as well. Yeah. So we want to go from the challenge to the opportunity. We want to go to, what are the challenges that we have? What are the things that are problematic? We think of them as headwinds, things that blow at us and slow us down, and we can't move towards the goal we're trying to get to. So we have to find ways to get there, and that means revisiting processes that may be misaligned. It means looking at bureaucracy and saying, is this still the right rule? Bureaucracy is important, but is it the right way to do things? And do we have the wherewithal or the authority to challenge those rules and say, okay, actually we need to change this a bit. We have to think about this in a different way. And when we do that, we can pivot to the opportunity. We can take that headwind, and in Amazon we talk about turning those into a tailwind, something that propels us forward. Take the challenge, the thing that's really hard, painful, an obstacle, the things that get in the way, and turn it into the energy that drives you forward. Create new business models, new ways of thinking, new ways of delighting your customers, new ways of supporting your constituents. So, with that, allow me to introduce Gunther. He will talk us through Kate. Thank you.
Thank you for the introduction, Thomas. Good morning, everyone. My name is Gunther Vink. I'm a product manager for Kate in KBC. I have 25 years of experience. So I watched the digital transformation of KBC very close from within IT. For those who may not know KBC, I will introduce you shortly with KBC. We are an integrated bank and insurance group. We are represented in 6 countries at the moment, mainly Belgium, the Central European region, and Ireland. Our main focus in KBC is to be the first and to be the reference in everything, to be the first to introduce new technologies and also to be the reference for other financial institutions. Kate is a good example of that. As an award that we received, many of them last year, is just a proof of that innovation that we deliver. But one we are very special and very proud of is the one that we received the end of last year. It's the SIA Award. It's because of the best app that we have for the world, actually. So the best one for all countries, for all the world. Why is this app so good? Why is it? What is it? What does it contain besides the normal things that you expect in a banking app? It also contains lots of third-party services. Third-party service where our app becomes a one-stop shop to buy tickets or for other things to do. But besides that, not only buying tickets, you can also gain some money with the cashback functions that are included in our app. And it's not only open to our customers, but it's also open to non-customers. So we have 1.6 million active users at the moment, resulting in, at the slide is still a wrong number, the last figures say 60 million transactions every month. Logins, I mean every month. 60 million, that means 60 million possible interactions with our customers every month. Of course, this app was not built overnight. It is a long journey. It is a journey of approximately 10 years. It was introduced in 2011, and a lot of things happened in the meanwhile. Of course, we started with a basic banking and insurance functionality, but slowly the extra functionalities were introduced to our app. And one of the most recent ones is our Kate. It's our hyper-personal digital assistant that was introduced in 2020. We are actually building this thing right now, and it's really happening right now. So it's integrated in our KBC mobile app. You can find it on any screen in our KBC mobile app at the moment. And it's possible to interact with Kate at the moment. So really communicate with Kate. You can ask her any kind of questions. But she will also bring you proactive messages towards you. She will proactively search for things that you might be interested in, where you can earn some money or gain some time just to make your life easier. What the near future will be is the introduction of in our app, but also we are looking further. Kate will not only be in our apps, but she will also help our employees in our branches and even in IT. We just heard in our new strategy. We come from a strategy where we have an omni-channel approach, where our bases were the branches, and the online channel, the digital channels, was just an ad to help our customers help themselves, to help to find a balance. And now we're shifting more to the digital-first approach, meaning that the customers should be able to help him in a digital way and should be able to handle things in a digital way. But, important one, stay with the human touch. If a customer decides that he needs the human, he will always have the possibility to check with that human. Kate will not only help the customer, she will not only bring proactive messages toward the customer, but also our employees, our KBC employees will get interesting information about customers, so she will augment actually our employees. Okay. That's a short introduction about Kate. I hand over to Jo, who will show you what kind of architecture we built behind this to make this all possible. So, Jo, please.
Okay. So, Gunther, thank you for introducing us to Kate. I will now try to give you some highlights, some insights in, first of all, the way we developed Kate from the start, and that we're all continuously even enhancing Kate. The most, oh no, not a very important slide. I'm just an enterprise architect of KBC, specialized mainly in PowerPoint stuff. But first of all, as you have seen in the movie, there are two ways of Kate to operate. The first one is what we call, as you can see over there, you to Kate, which is the customer takes his mobile phone and starts interacting with Kate. That was not the first digital assistant or bot we've developed. We've already developed several ones in the past and typically followed the pattern as a first step of developing a frequently asked questions bot. You develop a front end, a conversational element you can plug in your website, in your mobile app. You choose your bot framework. We are standardizing on Rasa. If you want an explanation, we can do it offline after the meeting while we're focusing on Rasa. And then depending on your maturity, your intelligence, or your feedback to the customer, the knowledge, you put it in the NLG part, or you put a knowledge base behind it, so that you can dynamically provide new hyperlinks to serve the customer. But with Kate, we had to take it to another level, because as you've seen in the movie, Kate should be a bot with hands, who can really, in the conversation, you can do something. You can do a money transfer. You can find your insurance documents. You can ask questions. You need business or financial intelligence behind it. So on top of the thing we already built with our first bots, we had to focus on service integration. And as it is about financial stuff, it should be end-to-end secured. On top of that, we also added memory. Currently, we're at the level of what we call short-term memory. So if you, within a mobile session, go back to Kate, you can pick up your previous conversation. We're hoping to grow to a long-term memory, but we're struggling with some apparently stupid things like, is that hyperlink that we provided 3 months ago, is that still working? The financial information we provided, is it still working? So if you tackle those topics, we could evolve to a long-term memory. But what is the most important one is the feedback loop, and not the technical side by streaming the things that happens in the bot to a data lake or whatever, but have also patterns, mechanisms, to have a team, and we have a dedicated team called Smarter Kate, who's constantly analyzing all interactions, conversations with the customer in a way that almost every week, 2 weeks, they can add new stories, fine-tune existing stories, conversations we have over there. And as you know, it's conversations of a customer, privacy, delicate, so we had to put a lot of effort in a mechanism to provide the Smarter Kate team to show them what happened without confronting them with privacy stuff of the customer. So that's the first pattern. The second one is, if this thing works, we will see the second one. Yeah, that's the second one, Kate to you. So then it's Kate who takes the initiative to start interacting with the customer. We also had that mechanism yet, because we had lead management, marketing campaigns, with a bunch of data science models over there, but it was typically focusing on the sales side and running more in a batch mode, scheduled way. But as you've seen in the movie, we want to embed Kate in the life of the customer. So we had to add something complementary to it, which is that monitor, alerting, and the recommendation mechanism we developed, which is the monitoring part is looking for things that happens in the life of the customer. The recommendation engine will, based on that event, check, is there something relevant that I can offer to the customer? And with the alerter, we get in touch with them. mostly now via push notifications. And also we contextualize it. So when the customer hits on that push message, he comes into Kate, but we add already information so that Kate can start a personalized conversation and don't ask unnecessary questions because we augment it with extra information. We then had a long meeting to decide how that thing would be named. We called it Montreal, which was not that difficult to find out. And then at the right-hand side, you can see some of those technologies we're using on AWS to build that thing. Perhaps nothing surprising over there, although we had religious discussions on are we going to go for Kinesis or SQS. But in fact, it's a bunch of valid technologies. But what is the most important thing is, why did we do this on the cloud? I'm going to start, if that next thing pops up, perhaps an untypical reason. Later on in the presentation, I will give you the typical reasons, but an untypical is Kate didn't start it to be a Belgian-only exercise. It was a group exercise. So from day one, we started together with a team, business and IT from Czech Republic, to develop Kate and to have one Kate within KBC Group. So we were immediately thinking about having a Kate in a box so that you can easily deploy it across countries. And in fact, the cloud, going to the cloud, gave us the opportunity to avoid a lot of discussions we would otherwise have if you do it on-prem. Because in this country, we're on Linux version whatever, and in that country still over there on a database version that. So you had a bunch of discussions. If you go for the platform as a service approach, combined with everything is software, this gives you a head start to have something like Kate in a box. And we also augmented it with a pattern of inner sourcing, because we want to collaborate together with local teams, adding new features to the components. Don't call me yet for a reference visit on inner sourcing. It's still in progress. We're struggling with a lot of elements, with the right attitude, but it is a far better way of collaborating than one dominant team in a whole international group who's saying, you have to use this software like it is and like we thought it should be. So in the previous slides, you've seen some elements of Kate. You've seen the face of Kate, which is the SDK we plugged in the mobile part. You have the brain of Kate, which is Rasa combined with our recommendation engine. The muscles of Kate are our financial services. But the heart of Kate is, in fact, those international teams all running Kate within their own local context and then collaborating all together on a group framework. And another challenge for Kate was we got two ambitious deadlines when we started in January. Around June, we should be ready for a prototyping and a demo on an Investors Day. And then in the fourth quarter, we should go live for all personnel. But with a thing like a digital assistant, a whole bunch of services, you do not know what the customer will ask, how will they use it. You know, when you go live, you have to meet some expectations, but there will also be some disappointment. So we also had to adopt another level of continuous improvement. In the past early days of IT, we focused on efficiency with the waterfall approach, stability, quality. Then when we started interacting with the customer experience stuff, we were already used to having a more iterative approach. But with Kate, we had to take that even one level higher. And for example, we had some surprising insights the moment we went live. To give an example, when you open up it to personnel, they're asking totally different questions than your customers because they're using internal words. And we were tuning the bot for external words, how the wording the customer will use. Also, you also have some annoying colleagues who know you go live with, and you said, okay, in the next release, we're going to go live with something around mortgages, and then they start testing it. All the kind of words, and not with sentences, but just with keywords. And this is a cycle you have to go through. You're forced to go live, but you have to continuously upgrade, continuously fine-tune your digital assistant. And this is then perhaps the list of typical reasons. If you want to have continuous deployment on a weekly basis, upgrade the stuff, you can do that on-prem. We had mechanisms over there. But on-prem, typically you have the tendency to be less disciplined. If you go to the cloud with some experts on it, you will work in a disciplined way. And then you have that paradox. By discipline, by doing an upfront investment, you get speed. On-prem, I worked 25 years on-prem, you sometimes are a little bit less reluctant to be disciplined, and you think it's go faster if you give me a terminal and I start typing, and my expert will manage it. But if you automate everything, it will give you full speed. Then training a bot, releasing a new version of a bot is a little bit more resource intensive than, for example, going through unit testing and regression testing of traditional software. And that's why our first version of Kate in Belgium was on-prem, but we couldn't adopt, in fact, the kind of regression and retraining mechanism that we needed. So we were glad after 6 months we moved everything to AWS. The Czech team immediately started on AWS so that over there we could have very intensive retraining and testing methods applied to the bot to be able to release in a safe way extra news stories, new training stuff on a weekly basis. And then the last element is when you're doing something like Kate, it's normal that your business team wants to try out stuff. You can think a lot about this will be good for the customer, but sometimes you have to do experiments. And for one of those experiments, by the way, it was a good experiment because it failed. It was not successful. But for that experiment, when we heard the requirement, we said, damn it, we will have problems. Because if that recommendation was popular, we were expecting about roughly for a few days, potentially 100 times more load than we were used to cope with. On-prem, sorry, although hardware vendors would love to help us, I think it's infeasible. That scalability, also the possibility to quickly ramp up your whole environment at reasonable price, that is one of the extra reasons and an important mechanism you should know about going to the cloud. So another way of looking at the heart of Kate is, if you talk about the cloud, everybody say you have to adopt the DevOps part, and then you can read a bunch of stuff, go to a lot of seminars and so on. But for Kate, we had to go further. It was not only blending our dev and ops team, it was also blending our data team, our data scientist team, our business team. Because from idea until going live, seeing what the activity is live, is in fact a blend across all these kind of roles in the organization. So, a last topic then, and it was not a reason to go to the cloud, but for me it was a pleasant surprise, is that in Kate there were a lot of architects. I was the PowerPoint architect. Then we had our AWS expert, who was in fact more the real architect, a bot architect, and so on. And we all had to blend together. For me personally, as an enterprise architect, when I was working on-prem, I made a nice PowerPoint slide, explained it to tech leads, they start designing. I saw some diagrams, but then roughly for 6 months, I didn't know what they were doing. I could look at the source code, but in the transparency of the cloud, after 1 month, when they did some spikes, some prototyping, I could see my slides becoming live. With things like X-Ray, CloudWatch, I was continuously interacting with my developers. And I sometimes saw that the scoping of components, that they made other choices. And then we had a discussion. And over here I will say that I was always right, but in reality often they were. And I started also adopting my way of thinking as an architect, because through those mechanisms you have a transparent interaction with your tech leads. So every good presentation should end up with a quote. That's a quote. But it's an important one, especially for the AWS people, but I want to end with another story. I think you've heard it through the whole storyline. It's all about people. We had to blend experts in cloud development with on-premise people. And you should know that if you take them in, those experts, some of them will never blend in your company. It's normal. Some of your on-premise people will not blend. But there are a lot of them, and if you put the right effort in it, they will blend. Some of your on-prem people will migrate to cloud development. They will integrate, put a lot of effort, put a lot of attention to it. And that same blending stuff we had to do on the other elements. We had data science experts versus, I think I can run the world with business rules people. We had it with the conversational people versus the screen people. We had it with the sales people versus the serve people. And all those blending elements are in fact a very important factor to reach success with things like Kate. So then I would rather end with this story. So Kate is both a catalyst. It triggers us to do things differently within KBC, the way we operate, but foremost also towards our customer and to interact with our customer. And it gives us also the opportunity, and that's then the lever part, to do completely different things. So that was my story. Back to Thomas. Okay.
Yeah, so again, I love this story because it talks about all those elements I touched on in the very beginning, about transformation, about innovation, about not really knowing where the end point is, about pivoting along the way. And you know, what I think is interesting, and this Alice story, this theme works here, is if you know Alice in Wonderland, right? She falls through this hole and no idea where she's going to land, right? So Kate had that same sort of experience, if you will, of starting in one place as a bot and then evolving into something much, much bigger and much, much better. And so it is an adventure that we're going on. It's a journey we're going on. And so with any journey, you have to start with understanding the terrain. So your business, your organization, your political context, your economic context, sustainability, the social context, you really have to understand what does that terrain look like. I'm going to make a pitch here for a colleague and friend, Wardley. There's a thing called Wardley mapping. So take a look at Wardley mapping. It's a really interesting way to think about terrain and finding your way to the place you're trying to get to. You have to really understand what the terrain looks like before you get going. So that's the first thing. And then, again, we talked about people throughout this presentation. People have to come on this journey. So once you know what the terrain looks like, once you know what your North Star is, where you're trying to get to, that's aligned to your corporate or organizational vision, then you take the journey and you try to get there. And so we have to support people on the journey. We have to help them along. We have to coach them. We have to teach them as leaders, and I'll talk about leaders in a second, but we have to create guardrails. So we touched lightly on security. One of the things about security is, you have to create the guardrails that protect the organization from the over-exuberance of people like me, right? I'm going to go off and do crazy things, so I need a guardrail that stops me from doing the crazy thing. But within those guardrails, I have autonomy. I can do things. I can create. I can invent. I can create new opportunities. I can help Kate grow up, right, and learn by doing. So this is very, very important. The other thing is ownership. Can we cultivate ownership, a sense of ownership in our teams? I had teams before where they would clock in the morning, they would go to their cubicle, they would develop whatever software they were working on, and then they would go home in the evening. And after a couple of years of being in the cubicle working on whatever they were working on, they weren't super excited anymore. So I would go to them, I said, why are you an engineer? Why do you develop software? And they always said, I love solving problems. I studied math, or I studied electrical engineering or chemical engineering. I want to solve problems. And so I actually did them a disservice. I put them in a box. I gave them a little tiny thing to work on. They didn't understand how that thing fits into the overall vision of what we're trying to accomplish. So give ownership. Let people own the thing that they're working on. Be proud about what they're doing within those guardrails. And then give them the autonomy to make decisions. Again, I worked for the US government. I worked for the military. I was a soldier. So in my past experience, it was always, I have to ask permission for everything. I ask my boss asks her boss, and it goes all the way up the chain, and somewhere, sometime, someone's going to make a decision who has no idea what it is I'm doing down here. They're going to make a decision, the decision comes back down, and then I execute or not. That's crazy. It takes time, it's inefficient, we disconnect the people that are doing the work from the decision makers, so give autonomy to the teams as much as possible with that ownership. And then they also have the responsibility to fix it if it breaks, right? So that's an added bonus, because if I own it and I make decisions in my space and I make a mistake, guess what? I can't put it on another team. I have to fix it. So guardrails, autonomy, mastery, empowerment, coaching. And as leaders, right? So everyone is a leader of their domain, whatever that is. That's how we think about it in Amazon. Anyone in my team, regardless of level, is a leader of their space, of the thing that they do. But as leaders, as we go up this, as we have teams, we have people that work for us, our job is to remove the obstacles, to empower them to do things, to democratize access to technology in ways to move faster, and just get out of the way. right? And I started off as a leader and a manager, as a someone who's always checking and micromanaging and making sure everything is done properly. And what a waste of my time to micromanage others who are perfectly capable. So remove the obstacles, get out of the way, let people thrive within your organization to invent the Kates of the world, the things that are really delighting the customer, that are removing problems for all of us. Let's go solve those really, really big problems that exist and turn those problems into opportunities, turn the challenge into a tailwind, and give your people the power to go solve those big problems. I recommend a book from Reed Hastings, Netflix. So I've worked with a bunch of folks who used to work at Netflix. They have a really interesting way of thinking about this as well. It's not our way, it's the Netflix way. You may find your own way of implementing these things. It's really extraordinary to look at the sort of the literature that's coming out around these topics on how do you recruit, how do you hire, how do you bring people on board, how do you create this culture of empowerment, and how do you just get out of the way and let people do what they're really good at. So we also want to help you with this, where it's about reinventing your business, rethinking your business models, pivoting, finding new ways to solving big problems. My team can help you with this. If you're interested, reach out to me or your account managers and ask about digital innovation. If we can, we'll try to help. We can't help everyone, but we'll do our best. And then again, we'll help you focus on this cultural piece. We'll share what we know. We're all in this together. We're trying to make the planet a better place, and we can do it together. Please, while you're here, also think about the skill builder piece. Think about certification. And what I'd like to do now is invite Jo and Gunther back up here, and we would love to hear your questions. Let's make this a dialogue. What questions do you have of us? What do you want to know about Kate? Anything, really, up to a point. So anyone have a question for any of us?
There's a question, I think.
Really? You're a very shy audience. Come on, let's go.
I saw.
Oh, there, where?
Yeah. Should bring in a
Okay, very
microphone.
Excellent.
Hello, my name is Vikas. I have a question from you. When you were telling about the journey of Kate, at this moment, all the models, are they pre-trained models or the team at KBC trains them, like the data science part, the modeling part?
For the recommendations,
there are chain like conversational recommendation, even
for the conversational part, it's the typical approach that you work on top of language models, which are typically pre-trained. But then on top of that, you build your own model, and then you start training it in supervised modus based on conversation stuff and so on. For the recommendation part, it's all homegrown models. Yeah.
So like bigger part is like pre-trained, or like in the entire app, what part do you do in-house and what part is the pre-trained from Amazon? Like
no, it's Amazon provides us all the services on top of which we developed the whole mechanism.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
Great. Next question. Back over there.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for your presentation. I'm really impressed with all the gamification elements that you added to your Kate application. How can we make sure that we don't glide into the Chinese kind of way of living, that instead of having these gamification elements as rewards, become a system of not having the rewards, become like a punishment? Mm-hmm. The ethical balance here.
Mm-hmm. First of all, I will give you two elements. The pattern you've seen, you to Kate, is open to every customer. The pattern Kate to you is only based on an agreement with the customer. So the customer really has to say, okay, yes, Kate, I allow you to go through my data. That's one element. And on top of that, when we're deploying data science models, all models are checked by both compliance teams, and we're even testing models on all the ethical elements. But you're 100% right. For us as a company, anyway, we try to make profit, but the whole privacy approach and keeping up the trust with the customer is a challenge. And we put a lot of attention to it, but it's really an important effort you have to make to indeed avoid that when you start interacting with Kate around certain topics, you could easily touch privacy and delicate topics. But we pay a lot of attention to it. But it's a risky part. Is that good enough as an answer? Yeah, it's in the whole mechanism. And for example, a data scientist cannot decide on his own, for example, I'm going to use this kind of data. We have a compliance team checking on it. We have business people checking also on the behavior of models. Okay?
Next question.
Nobody wants the phone number of Kate? Okay. I don't have it. Yeah.
There's a question right there.
Hello, Denis van der Steen, Smiles. You said you had to bring lots of different people from business, IT, and so on. What was the biggest challenge you had? Because it's cultural change, and how did you cope with it? The challenge to bring people with very different mindset together to work on Kate and all to achieve the journey.
I think it was not that complicated because actually Kate started at the top of KBC. It was an idea that originally started at the top of KBC. So when I saw the slide about leaders breaking borders, it was not that difficult. So
the first 3 months we were all together in one room, and then COVID happened. Yeah, but really, yeah. And now the problem we now have is, in fact, you want to scale up, but you still have to, when you're scaling up, people need those guardrails and also that Kate spirit. But in the beginning, we were just with one team in one room, and it was the general manager up to that real architect who was allowed to do something on AWS. So not me.
Yeah, maybe something that comes to mind also is that a lot of people are accustomed to asking permission, right? They are accustomed to working in a particular way. And so as leaders, we have to model that behavior that we want, right? So we have to show it's okay. And you mentioned earlier failure, right? It's okay to make mistakes as long as you learn from them. That's okay. So we have to create that permissive environment and show how to do it and model it and then allow people to learn. It takes time. Another question. Yes.
Hello. Will there be a roadmap available for Kate with the rollout of functionality? Or is it like a top?
of course, there is a roadmap. It's a very long list of things that we wish to do to accomplish with Kate, but it's not public, of course. Yeah, we're bringing out every month, every week actually, new functionalities for Kate.
And it's also a roadmap that is almost every month changing. Yes. Shifting priorities and so on.
Because it's actually steered by our customers. Because we see which questions they ask, how they interact with Kate, and then we change things that it will happen in a more fluent way for our customers.
For example, one thing we discovered by going live was that it's something that otherwise we only had around campaign, that's seasonal topics. Around June, people were looking for the tax documents. And that was a question we were not prepared for. Then when we did a campaign for another commercial product, we discovered that the customer was asking about that product in Kate. So now we have the rule, the moment you launch something new, the Kate team is always involved to get the bot trained to answer the first questions. And that's a constant change and improvement stuff we have to do.
So it's like the phrase, planning is essential, plans are futile.
Yeah.
Another question.
Does Kate speak many languages?
At this moment, only 2. It's Dutch and French. But English is in the pipeline.
I have a question, sorry. I was wondering why the name Kate.
Where is the mic?
Over there. You do not want to know how many top management meetings were touching that topic. No, but it was a valid topic. The name came from Johan Thijs. But then you had the sensitive part. Why the hell do we call that bot again? Why does it get a female name? We also had to check marketing stuff and so on. There were a lot of discussions. What the hell will be the name of Kate? But as Johan Thijs is the boss. No.
There's a question up front here.
Do you see already a competitive benefit of this, and in comparison to other banks, and how do you measure that?
Yeah, actually, the reward we received last year was also accomplished by this Kate that we introduced. She was still a baby Kate at that moment, but it was really because of that it made a difference towards other applications.
I can add one element, which is something that up front we were also never thinking about, but then that we saw happening was that if you design a mobile app, you have to think about your menu structure. But it's always, you can only combine 2 or 3 dimensions. But the whole aspect of an all-in-one app makes that you get stuck with it. And now we see the tendency that it's also used, where can I do this in mobile? I ask it to Kate. And this is an extra feature that helps you to manage your app.
Yeah, to navigate.
Yeah.
There's a question up here.
How many interactions do you have per day with Kate, and how do you measure which ones are successful?
Yeah, I don't know the numbers by head, but indeed we measure everything that the customers behave and even the pattern that they follow throughout the interaction with the bot, because we also see there what interactions fail at some point in time, and that's what we do with the Smarter Kate that you already mentioned, to improve that interaction.
In the log that we're exporting, there are some key steps in a conversation that we're constantly monitoring. And they are all labeled on being successful, being not interested. And this way we blend it. Yeah.
That's indeed a feedback loop that we have. We bring a proposal to the customer starts interacting, and at some point in time maybe he just stops the conversation, and that's what we need to know. Why does he stop there?
So we have time for maybe 2 more questions. Any other question here?
Hello. I wanted to ask you regarding your product roadmap and how do you define your priorities. I would imagine the list is just getting longer and longer every day. What are the rules actually that you use to define the priorities and changing whether you're going to do first, whether you're going to do second, and when do you start thinking about also expanding your team when you see that the roadmap is getting bigger and bigger?
Yeah, expanding a team is a decision that we have to make in KBC on a global level, of course. How much do we want to invest in a Kate product that we're creating here? Prioritizing the roadmap, it's a decision based on what is the value for KBC, of course, but certainly what is the value for the customer. And those, you have to balance those 2 factors. We follow a SAFe methodology to do that and to try to prioritize everything that's needed. And that's also functionality toward our customer, but also the capabilities that need to make it possible for our customers, or to make Kate possible, actually.
Okay, 1 more question. Anyone? Any takers?
States where it is.
One.
Okay. Hi, Sujaya. You're a bank, and you're a bank, and I think you measure everything in terms of money. You said it's okay to make mistakes, and you said you have to make breakthroughs or change a bureaucratic way. So what was the biggest financial mistake that you made in building Kate? And you are proud of it, that you made that. That's why this is happening.
But, first of all, as such, we didn't make any financial mistake. Yeah. But okay, to give you that example, we prepared for that 100 times more, and we didn't needed it. But it was, I think, 4,500 euro. So officially, not such a big problem. But I will give you another example that we discovered. We sometimes make mistakes, and we even had technically, we made a mistake by sending out recommendations for a hint around traveling. And it was just that you open up your credit card to be able that you can use it abroad. We made a mistake in the algorithm, and by accident, we sent it to a lot of people. And then we discovered one extra advantage of Kate that we didn't know up front. It's because when you send for a mail to a customer or a trigger or whatever, and then he has to jump to a sales process or whatever, you lose the opportunity to interact. With Kate, we send out a push trigger to a lot of people. We say, probably you're going to travel. And when they clicked on the push, they came into Kate, and the first thing Kate asked was, is it correct that you're probably going to travel soon? And then the customer could say no, and then conversation stops. So we have a method of saying sorry to the customer by interacting with it, and even if you make a mistake, because you have a conversation, you can first check, is my assumption correct? And you can even use that kind of information. So we learn a lot out of mistakes.